So the horn thing comes in one part. The money lending thing comes in another part, right? The Jews are all rich comes in another part. The controlling thing comes in another part. It sort of builds up over time, over centuries, and eventually it becomes this conspiracy theory. Bad things happen, you blame them, right? The plague happens, you blame the Jews, right? World War I, you blame the Jews, right? It's a scapegoating technique. Germany's not going to take any responsibility for having fought the disastrous war, and it's their fault. Let me talk briefly about the second thing. Antisemitism was one. This is sort of two parts. First part. When England was colonizing Ireland, one of the things they didn't notice that it was having problems with is they fight back. So what the English did, beginning of the 17th century under Cromwell, is that they began to import Scottish people into Ireland, to colonize Ireland. An area now called Ulster, also called Ulster then, and they gave them plantations and they gave them legal exemptions. They could do the dirty work of maintaining the indigenous Irish, and that they would be able to have rights and privileges unique to them. And imagine you colonized it for a couple of generations. You no longer think of yourself as Scottish anymore, you now think of yourself as Irish. But you're special Irish. You see yourself as better than the indigenous Irish people. This is called divide and conquer. To this day, Ireland is still divided that way. Northern Irish people think of themselves as more like England, they're still part of the United Kingdom, and Southern Ireland, the country of Ireland, sees themselves as indigenous Irish. There's been problems in Ireland ever since. Well, the same thing happened in colonial North America. Right? Jamestown was the population of the actual settlers was being disenfranchised by the actual colony. So you worked for the colony as an indentured servant for a while, and they gave you a parcel of land, and you worked that. That parcel of land was always out in the frontier. Well, the governors of Jamestown got so wealthy, and the colonists got so pissed, that the colonists actually attacked Jamestown and burned it to the ground. After this coalition of whites, blacks, and natives burns Jamestown down to the ground, what they end up doing is they end up trying the Irish model in this country. That is to say, they give one group rights and privileges they don't give to the other group. They draw lines of color. And slowly, they've been ratcheting up the punishments. Right? First punishment is, if a black person and a white person commit a crime together, the white person gets the punishment of the black person. If a white person and a black person have a kid, then the child has the legal rights only of the black person's less. Africans are no longer allowed to own firearms. And eventually you begin to get punishment. You commit a crime, indentured servitude could be lengthened from 7 years to 14, and then from 14 years to life, and effectively you end up creating a population of slaves. Eventually slavery becomes a punishment, and then it turns out, so if the mother is a slave, the child is a slave and therefore belongs to the slave master. By 1705, what you get is a complete legal distinction that tracks to an ethnic distinction. So that no matter how poor and destitute you were as a white person, in the colonies, you're always going to be better off than the black people. When you, poor white person, you saw yourself as identifying primarily with the white people, even though you yourself could be just as poor as them. That distinction legally separated the populations into distinct groups. Part 2. At the same time that a new scientific distinction is being developed. This is called the theory of taxonomy. Taxonomy is when you begin to divide creatures and plants into all the things that you could do, right? So you divide, there are trees and there are different kinds of trees, right? Ash trees, oak trees, white oak. And the big guy here is a guy named Linnaeus, 1735 separation of all things. Right here there's a distinction between 4 different kinds of humans. There are Europeans, and it says here that they are albes, they are white. There are Americans, and they are red. They are Asians, and they are yellow, and they are Africans, and they are black. 1735, first time we have full distinction drawn between human beings. Now here, they're just separated. In the 1745 edition, guess what he does? They go from just being listed to being ranked. So Native Americans are second, Asians are third, and Africans are bottom. Because again, what is Carl Linnaeus trying to do? This is 1735. This is about the most scientific kind of thing you can do, classifications. This is at the height of the enlightenment of the scientific process. What's happening here is that an unscientific thing is creeping its way in. Race isn't real. If you go into our genes, there is no gene for white or Native American. Because the genetics are what determines our biology, not the way we look. So there is simply no genetic corresponding to European or African. And it makes sense, why not, right? Because you can be African American, you can be black skinned and still be Irish. You can have an Irish great-grandparent or something. Because the genes here are what are scientific. That is what we analyze. We analyze the actual structure of what our biological makeup is. But notice, this is what's going on here. Put this together. Right? Anti-Semitism is the ability to target groups of people that you don't like or you want to blame, and blame them for why your society is not working the way you think it should. We have legal distinctions that are tracking between white people and black people in the colonies, and that leads directly into a justification for slavery. It's as if at the bottom of the food chain, at the bottom of the structure, they're fundamentally not different. Africans are not different than animals. Still, to this day, racist stereotypes of African Americans still portray African Americans as ape-like monkeys, right? This is where it's coming from. It's this science. So you have the separation, right? The separation is doing that work. And then finally you have the financial incentive. And the financial incentive is very clear. You use the science to justify the economic interest. We saw the exact same thing in the burning of the Jews, right? It was very clear, they say it. The Christians even told you why they did it. It was the money that got them killed. We have a system where groups several different unrelated things, right? Anti-Semitism, legal distinctions that give privilege to one group over the other, and a financial incentive are conspiring to twist, in some sense, the logical, scientific way of understanding the world in order to justify a system of control, to justify something like slavery, to justify something like, well, eventually Jim Crow, etc., etc. And not just to justify it, but also to encourage it. When we say that the race is not biologically real, it's a social construction, we can say, yes, it's not biologically real, but this had incredibly real-world consequences. Because in 1735, when Linnaeus ranked these and put Africans at the bottom, scientifically we know what that did at the moral level. What we're doing to Africans is okay because they're not any more different than apes. That's the horror. Science is not always neutral. You look at it in context. Who's doing what for whom and why?